Palacios. I'm a board member on the Hispanic Leaders Network here. And I've had the pleasure of, after 40 years here at Baylor, I just retired. So I've had a lot of pleasures, yes. So it's exciting. Formerly I was the Dean for Student Development, and then I was the Assistant to the Vice President for, let's see here. Well, it was for diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging. So that was a lot of words, but they were great fun. The Hispanic Leaders Network is a group of passionate leaders who are deeply vested in supporting current and future leaders in the greater Waco community. Our vision is to develop and empower current and future leaders to make a difference. Our mission is to provide personal, cultural, and professional development and opportunities to inspire Hispanic leaders to serve and make a positive impact. Now, we have a great new presentation tonight. I'm very excited about our panelists. These are community leaders that will be coming together and sharing their thoughts and their perspectives on bridging communities. First, I'd like to welcome our senior, Ashley Flores. She's the Latinx Coalition intern for the Department of Multicultural Affairs. If you'll come up, she's going to give us the invocation. And bless the food for their comings. And then again, did I mention she is a senior, so we're very proud of her.
Thank you, Dr. Palacios. Well, I hope everyone's evening is well. I'd like to take this moment and pray over tonight's dinner and also for everyone who is present with us today. I would like to note that I will be doing 2 invocations, one in English and one in Spanish. Now, if we can take this moment and bow our heads. Heavenly Father, we stand before you as we gather together here tonight to expand our knowledge, make greater connections, and bridge our community stronger than ever. As we begin our event, we dedicate this time to you. We pray for all the presenters, attendees, and volunteers who made this event possible. I pray that you bless this food we are about to partake of and bless those who prepared it, that it might nourish our bodies and strengthen us with your goodness. In Jesus' name we pray, amen. Te invocamos, Señor, agradecidos hoy en día por darnos la oportunidad de poder estar presente, listos para aprender y crear conexiones. Te damos gracias por todo lo que colocas a nuestro alrededor. Oramos por los presentadores, asistentes y voluntarios que hicieron posible este evento. Te pido que bendigas nuestra cena y las manos que trabajaron hoy en noche para hacerlo y que nutra nuestros cuerpos y nos fortalezcan con tu bondad. Y llévanos siempre al corazón de tu Hijo Jesús, por Cristo nuestro Señor. Amén.
Thank you, Ashley, for the beautiful prayers in both languages. Now I'd like to take the opportunity to recognize any distinguished guests and elected officials joining us today. Would you please stand so we can recognize you? Officials, elected officials. Now we already said our panelists are already VIPs and very, and we were going to introduce them, but do we have anyone else? Yes, thank you. There you go, thank you. Do we have any student organizations here? Any students representing student organizations? Would you please stand? You know, without great partners and sponsors, the Hispanic Leaders Network would not be able to host events like we have tonight. We're very thankful for Baylor's University External Affairs for sponsoring our Conectar-Connect tonight. So thank you. Thank you for Jeremy Vickers. Where are you, Jeremy? You're not in the there you are, Jeremy Coleman. You can sit back there. Thank you to Jeremy and to the External Affairs team. Would you please raise your hands? We thank you for your continuous support. Let's welcome Camille Wilder with Baylor University's External Affairs Office to bring greetings and say a few words.
Good evening, everyone. On behalf of Baylor University and the Department of External Affairs, I want to welcome you to tonight's event. The Office of External Affairs strives to build community and relationships with different people, organizations, nonprofits, and businesses within the Waco community, and we are very grateful to serve Baylor and the City of Waco in that capacity. So thank you again for being here tonight, and we welcome you.
Thank you, Camille. Now I'd like to invite Cavi de Razas, the Program Manager for Leadership Plenty Institute, to introduce our moderator. Thank you very much.
Hi, everyone. It is my pleasure to introduce Dr. Crystal Diaz-Espinosa. Dr. Diaz-Espinosa has over 13 years of experience working in areas of enrollment management, leadership and professional development, and diversity, equity, and inclusion. She holds a master's degree in higher education and student affairs from Baylor University and a PhD in higher education administration from the University of Tennessee. She currently serves as the Director of Enrollment, Career, and Alumni Services at the Diana R. Garland School of Social Work for Baylor University. She is active in many diversity-related initiatives and serves in several leadership roles, including Chair of the Staff Council and Chair-elect for the newly formed Latinx Faculty and Staff Association. She teaches a Human Diversity and Leadership course for Baylor's Master of Social Work program, and her work within the Waco community includes serving on the board of directors for grassroots community development and serving as the race equity consultant for the Waco Foundation, where she helps bring together community leaders to engage with race equity efforts within their own organizations and in the greater Waco community. She is married to a native Wacoan and is the mother to a beautiful 2-year-old who is already a proud Wacoan as well. Please welcome Dr. Crystal Diaz-Espinosa. Thank you for moderating this important discussion on bridging communities. You can have the floor from here.
So I have my water with me, just so you know, because my voice is going out, so bear with me. But I'm so excited that everybody is here tonight on this beautiful day. We had sunshine today, thank the Lord for that. And so I am so excited to moderate the panel of very distinguished guests who really are finding different ways to bridge communities here in Waco. And I'm excited to get to talk with them and for us to learn from them and to hear about what they're doing. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce them. Also, I'll call you up one by one, and then you can feel free to come. Microphones are on, just for the panelists to know. So our first guest panelist is Dr. Cheryl Victorian, our City of Waco Police Chief. Anywhere you'd like, you get the first choice.
There's bubbly water or regular water.
We have Dr. Johnette McAllen, President of McLennan Community College. We have Fernando Arroyo, Chief of Staff at Waco Family Medicine. We have Jaja Chen is the co-owner of Cha Community and we have Dr. Gavin Villegas, who is the Assistant Dean of Intercultural Engagement and Division Initiatives at Baylor University's Division of Student Life. Yes, Jaja got the bubbly, so she's ready. So thank you all for joining us on our panel tonight. So the first question really is, tell us about your role within your organization, but specifically how diversity, equity, and inclusion is part of your day-to-day work. So anyone can start. I'll let you all decide.
Since I'm on the end, who was introduced first, I guess I'll go. Greetings, everyone. First of all, I'd just like to thank the Hispanic Leadership Network for always including me and asking me to participate. It's such an honor. I am Chief of Police for the City of Waco. I will have 2 years as the police chief in March. And Diversity, equity, and inclusion is very important in policing in particular because our police department should be representative of our cities. When I first came to the city of Waco, we were 77% white, like 20% Hispanic, and then 10% African American. And I knew I had work to do, and we still have work to do. So it is very, very important inside of our organization as we should represent our communities that we serve.
I guess we can go down the line. I'm Johnny McCallum, and I'm president of Plymouth Community College. I'm really old because I've been there since 1989. I was at a dinner this weekend. Someone said they were the oldest at the table, and I said, "No, you're not." But I've been president since '09, and I've been committed to diversity my entire life. I grew up in a small town in Louisiana, which was about 50-50 African American and white, but we lived in different communities, and it was totally segregated. So once I learned that that was really a bad thing, I've really been an advocate for that, and we're really excited to participate in diversity and equity and inclusion. And we have about 34% of our students who are Hispanic, about 14% who are Black, and we have a DEI department that helps teach everyone, our employees, about accepting everyone. We're really, the big deal for us is inclusion, and that's one of our core values. And it's also about helping everybody feel like they belong and do the wraparound things so that they will be comfortable. So we're glad to be here tonight.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here with friends and with new friends, and thank you so much to HLN Incubator and so many who helped put tonight together so that I can see my college professors when I was here and see my friends from organizations and social services from all walks of life. And so it's a lot of fun to be here. My name is Fernando Arroyo. I'm the Chief of Staff at Waco Family Medicine. Essentially, my role is to keep an eye on projects that we need to keep an eye on. And regarding diversity, equity, and inclusion, it boils down to well-being. Having an opportunity to be well, whether it's health for our patients or whether it's health and experience at work, that's what's key. That's what's most important, is an opportunity for optimal well-being for our patients and for our colleagues. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Jaja Chen, and I am a local social worker here in town. And there's 3 different kind of areas that I work in the community. First, as a private practice therapist, and in that role, diversity, equity, and inclusion shows up a lot because I serve mostly BIPOC or Black, Indigenous people of color when it comes to clients who've gone through racial trauma as a trauma therapist. And then in that role, also doing a lot of training for fellow trauma therapists, especially when it comes to knowing how to provide more multicultural, inclusive trauma therapy services. And then as a co-owner of Chalk Community, that is a role that I do with our Boba Tea Cafe. And then, diversity shows up in all that we do because it is one of our core values, and also is part of why we started, because as Asian Americans here in Waco, seeing a lack of representation of the diverse food and drinks that we grew up loving, because I'm a 2nd generation Taiwanese American, instead of just going to Dallas or Houston or Austin to be able to find those foods, my husband and I decided that we needed to be part of the diverse change that we wanted to see within our communities. And so in 2018 is when we started our Chalk Community Boba Tea pop-up tent at the Waco Downtown Farmers Market. And so diversity, equity, inclusion shows up in different ways, ranging from the food that we have on our menus to the suppliers that we work with to even recruiting and the ways that we go about hiring. In fact, 95% of our team is person of color. And then within my 3rd role is an emerging role within the Asian Leaders Network that we're creating actively, very emergent, not yet a nonprofit, but hoping to by the end of this year. with the inspiration and support and the leadership of Hispanic Leaders Network, especially because we want to be able to help co-create more community and inclusion for the Asian populations here in Waco.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Kevin Villegas, Assistant Dean of Intercultural Engagement and Division Initiatives. That Division Initiatives piece means they give me whatever else they want to give me. But the intercultural engagement piece is really the bread and butter of what I've been hired to do here. I started in August. And so my work is really a DEIB role, so that being really important in our context for a sense of belonging for our students. And I'd also add justice in there. Justice is something we talk often about in my work. And so specifically, I've been tasked with leading a comprehensive strategic approach to make Baylor a more inclusive space for our students, and also equipping our staff as well to do that work. But it just doesn't fall on just one person's shoulders or an office's shoulders, but everyone is thinking in those terms. And then outside of the division, leading up with some others across campus that are being put in place to develop a comprehensive strategic plan for the institution as Baylor aspires to be more diverse, more welcoming, and more inclusive. And so those are some of the things that attracted me to come to Baylor since I started in August. And so it's just been a lot of listening and learning and trying to understand this place and the needs and the gaps and the challenges. And so DEI is something I think about every single day. It's usually one of the last things on my mind when I go to bed. So.
And I think what I love about all of your answers that's so powerful is that DEI isn't, the DEI isn't something that is separate, but it feels like it's threaded into everything that you're doing. I think that speaks to the work that you're doing within your organization. And I will also add that Dr. Villegas is probably the newest to Waco, so if you get a chance to introduce yourself, he is trying to learn people from Waco and get into the community, so I will say that too. He came from outside Texas, so just opening it up. So our theme tonight is Bridging Communities. Talk about what Bridging Communities looks like within your organization, and then what that means for you with the Waco community. Anyone, and you don't all have to answer.
I'm gonna start again because I need y'all to extend me some grace. We have 12.5% representation of Hispanics. After I did my math, I was like, did you say 20? But anyway, extend me some grace. 10, 12.5, and 77, and it was 0.5% is Hispanic. Asian American. So anyway, man, one of my primary goals when I first came to the city of Waco was to make sure we increased the number of positive interactions that we had in our Black and brown communities, particularly with everything that's going on across the nation, that continues to go on across the nation. I felt that it was important that our African American, Hispanic, Asian communities understand that we are part of the community, that we are interested. What they're saying is a small minority, and the overwhelming majority of the men and women who serve and honor this badge are great people and are human. So I just thought it was very, very important that we increase the number of positive interactions we had. Fortunately, when I got here, they had already gave us funds to start a new unit, which is our neighborhood engagement team. And we have our neighborhood engagement team on top of our community service team, who are out and about in the community. We're hosting events, we're participating more in events, and I just plant a little seed, and this unit just runs with it. So everything that you're seeing that the police department does, these are the amazing women that serve you in your city from day to day. I may have just given them a little bit and just told them to run with it, and they run with it, and they exceed my expectations. So when people see you out in public and give me credit, I'll say that's my team that's done that. I just planted the seed and paved the way and told them they're free to do it. And I think they've done it. Officer Sophie Martinez is here from our community outreach team, and they do a phenomenal job. And hopefully, if you haven't participated in any of our events, either as a volunteer or came out and enjoyed our events, I hope that you're able to get involved and help us to have those positive interactions with the community to help change the perceptions of policing.
Well, we interact in a lot of ways, but I want to focus a little bit on what we do to provide opportunity and debt-free degrees. That's what we work on doing, and we're in the public schools. I guess, Fred, is that right, about 28 public schools? And so they can go free and get a great college education with our full-time faculty or our regular adjuncts. Sometimes we use the school teachers, not very much, but so you can get out of high school, and sometimes we've got 50, 60 people who graduate with an MCC degree before they graduate from high school. So then, if they're on free and reduced lunch, they're free, and then they pay a reduced fee of 40% less if they're not, so you have to pay the full thing. And many of our school partners pay the rest of that. So we have that opportunity, and we have McLennan Scholars. Alondra, just stand up just 1 second. She's one of my presidential scholars, and she's working at Waco And I remember the first day I saw her, and she came in and was deciding what to do, and she really didn't have the funds to go to Baylor full-time initially. So she came to us first. She went to Baylor, now has a master's degree, and is an amazing young lady. So that's what we really want to do, is make it available for people to graduate, go to work, not be in debt a lot. They can go to Baylor, they can go on campus. You know, we have Tarleton State and Texas Tech, and you can go right here in Waco and never have to leave. So we bridge in many different ways, but I just wanted to talk a little bit about what we want to do to help people be successful. You're one of our success stories. You might mention it in your response.
I'd be glad to, and it's a joy to. Earlier, I saw Dr. McCowan at another meeting, and it just warms my heart. It's every day I could easily complain about stuff, but I found so many things that are really magical, that spark just magic, and I can either see it as an ordinary thing, or I can recognize the sacredness, the holiness of that ordinary experience. But it was no ordinary thing. The MCC served as a catalyst for me. I went to University High School, which is not a few blocks from here. My dad only made it to the 3rd grade. My mom only made it to the 6th grade. She was 12 years old and then dropped out because she had to work. My first language was Spanish. Back in the day, Latin American Christian Center, which then became Avance, which then became Inspiración. I'm on board of Inspiración. So many folks from the community, and my counselor said, you can get a really good job and after high school. So I didn't think I had no one who went to college. I didn't have any examples. I didn't know who to ask or what it was like, and so I didn't even consider it. It wasn't even a thought in my mind. So I got my first job as a busboy at a local restaurant, Casa del Castillo, and Richard Coronado, who was at that time involved in the I don't know what department he was in. I don't know if it was counseling or something. Continuing education. That was the department he was in. We had a mutual friend, and she said, "Hey, you're graduating. Have you considered college?" And she said, my brother works at MCC, and he'd love to give you a tour. And she wanted me to go, but she was trying to not force me or not scare me away, and she probably would have. But Richard reached out to me. I was a kid. I was like, what is this about? He was also involved in LULAC. Gave me a $1,000 scholarship and said, just give it a try. Just give it a try. MAC as well, MAC scholarships. And so that's how I was able to attend MCC, and the folks at MCC taught me how to study. They taught me how to read. They really helped me out where I had gaps, right? And I'm really grateful for MCC, who launched me and catalyzed an academic trajectory now with 3 degrees. I'm not saying that to be bragging, because there's so many here that are far have done incredible things, but I say that because of how grateful I am for the resources in this community, for MCC, for Dr. McCowan, and for the neighbors, the residents, the people in this community. I'm really grateful for them, and that I get to be a small part of their lives. I'll say a fake name, Aurelie, giving a call to our clinic and having somebody give her information to help with her chronic case management needs in a language that she understands. That's how we're bridging. And it's not easy, because we're in when you're a bridge, I don't know if you know, but bridges get walked on sometimes, you know? But bridges also serve to connect continents, to connect cities, to connect hearts, to connect minds. So I'm grateful.
So specifically, in my role and work at Child Community, different ways that we seek to bridge communities is all rooted in relationships. There's a saying, a Japanese saying or principle that's ichie ichigo, which means it's a once in a lifetime moment, or the idea that there's only one moment and one time with the very people in this very room that you can have a conversation or a relationship. Ever since I learned that principle, I realized everything we do, when it comes to bridging communities, has to be rooted in the relationships. And so before we jump into how do we serve or bridge with the community, we start with ourselves first, right, as a leader. So it's so important, of course, I'm a therapist, so kind of biased, but it's so important to take care of our own mental health, wellness, make sure we're bridging internally first, and then from there, extending the same support for our team. And so a lot of our focus is on bridging communities internally first within our team. And so all our team members go through initial onboarding trainings, diversity, equity, inclusion trainings, and then from there, creating a team culture and community internally, right? And then we are then able to extend community with our guests and then with the communities outside of that. And so practically what things have looked like for us has been having every other month team gatherings and trainings. We've continued beyond the initial onboarding DEI trainings to also hire on DEI consultants like Dr. Diaz Espinosa to help with DEI trainings. And then he really helped us to also look at how can we merge DEI with the small business world in a cafe. So very practical applications with how do we serve guests? How do we examine our unconscious bias? How do we consider policies that we're creating within our small business and ensuring that there's justice, equity, diversity, inclusion being emerged, even in things like suppliers and ingredients, right? And so a lot of the work that I do outside of our team dynamics is really looking at, who are the suppliers that we're taking on, how are they connecting with diversity, inclusion, and then we do a lot of work with environmental sustainability as well, and so then wanting to ensure that those values are infused in the decisions that we make. And for us, it's gonna be specifically with food and tea and all the different kind of sourcing materials that we're looking at. And then from there, once our team is taken care of, guests are taken care of, then we're able, especially as a small business, to be able to then give back further into the community. And so for us, when we were first starting up as a small business, we weren't really able to do as much. And I think as a social worker, I felt like, there's so much more I want to be able to do, but then we also have to consider, we have to take care of ourselves and our team first. But in the last couple of years, I would say from 2020, probably since the pandemic to now, there has been so many different opportunities that we've had as we continue growing as a small business to be able to see ways that even a small startup can be able to bridge communities, right? And so ways that that's shown up for us has been, for example, using our social media platforms to raise more awareness about anti-Asian racism concerns in the midst of the pandemic. And then from there, working alongside other Asian small businesses who were having trouble with navigating COVID pandemic policies or not knowing how to handle anti-Asian racism that they were facing from customers or folks. And so really providing a lot of support for folks in the community, advocacy for the small businesses in particular, and then also eventually from there, we also had more ideas, right, that sparked about developing Asian leaders network. I think I was one of those that was like, I don't want to really be the one that has to do further work. Why does it have to be us, that starts AOLN? But then I think really in the end, it went back to, okay, if we don't start it, nobody is really going to do this kind of work, right? And we have the privilege and opportunity to be able to have, the resources, or to have the language abilities, or to have the connections and relationships, right, to be able to learn and to be mentored, and then to be able to start something new. And so that's a little glimpse into the work that we do.
I really appreciate the theme of building bridges or bridging communities. I think, yes, you do get walked on, but it's also a way to build a bridge over divides. So there's a divide there, and really the work that I do in particular, and we do here at Vail with students, is equipping them to go back to their communities or to their vocational calling, whatever it may be, to be that bridge when they see division, when they see something, a gap in place. And so really that's helping students learn how to do that, equipping them with the tools to do that, and it is a skill that can be developed. And so it first starts by role modeling it for them as well, and equipping student leaders to do that, because they're going to have greater influence on their peers than sometimes we would. So it's important that we're equipping student leaders to go do this work, because surprise, surprise, they're all on, most of them are on social media, and it's very easy, and for us too, to get in an echo chamber and to just be caught up in some of the vitriol of disagreements on different perspectives, whatever the issue may be. And sometimes our students, just like us, they get wrapped up into that, and helping them to think critically and actually achieve deep disagreement rather than shallow disagreement. Oftentimes, we're fond of saying, oh, let's just agree to disagree, but I think that's shallow disagreement. So equipping them to have the boldness and the courage to actually lean into difficult conversations and actually see the dignity in other people and work to try to understand each other and together build that bridge that's going to close that gap and create some more mutual understanding. Because we live in a world where there are systems that want to divide us and want to keep us divided. And so it's important that we build bridges of unity together, and we can develop those skills. All of us should be cultivating those skills to do that, role modeling it for our children and for the students in our workplaces.
I think one of the important themes that's coming out from them is that the work of building bridges and DEI is in every decision you make. And some people think that it's just something you do and then you do the day-to-day stuff. And it's sounding like it really isn't all from the suppliers to the way that you create language on a website, all the things. So I think Jaja and Dr. Vegas addressed this already, but for the other panelists, and if you want to add anything, how do you prepare people within your organization, whether that's staff, officers, students, to effectively work with diverse community members and form meaningful partnerships?
Okay. So first of all, I think it's important that we model behavior that we would like our teams to perform. Our leadership creates the environment of the organization, and I feel like if they see me out and about in the community, I offer them opportunities to be out and about in the community and to connect with community and to share why it's so important that we are building those relationships within our communities, that they will model that behavior and see the importance of it. And also, in policing, we have cultural diversity classes. Before I came to Waco, I co-developed a class called Building Trust from Trauma, to talk about those hard topics that we refuse to talk about, that history that we've ignored regarding the police and the trauma that we caused and since the beginning, right? And then particularly during civil rights. So a lot of our officers that did not understand, why there was so much mistrust in our Black and brown communities. And so we had to teach them about this tough conversation. People came in with their arms crossed because, they felt like, okay, they're about to blame us. It's not about blame. I just need you to understand and do some perspective taking. And we did perspective taking exercise. We did trauma experiences based on your own trauma, and then trying to get you to understand the trauma of others. And it's a class that was still going on when I left Houston to come to Waco. And so we sent a couple of our officers down to Houston to actually look at the class to make sure that we could come up and develop something specifically for Waco regarding the history in Waco, to teach our officers about the communities that they're going into and any trauma that we may have caused as police officers in those communities to help us better understand the members of our communities that we're serving and to better approach our relationships as we build those relationships and continue to try to build those relationships after every incident that happens in policing. Especially since a lot of people paint us with a broad brush. And so I feel like if we build emotional capital within our communities, when somebody sees something happen in Memphis, Tennessee, they'll go, nope, not Waco PD. That's not the experience that I've had with our officers, right? And so that's what I'm trying to instill in our organization, that it's so important to make those connections, to understand one another. It's hard to hate up close. It's easy to love up close. We'll get to get in those conversations and have those deep and hard and tough conversations. And you walk away with a sense of understanding and putting yourself in that other person's shoes. So.
Well, the center of what we do has to do with our core values, and we've all talked about that for years. But we really focus on them, and one of them is people matters, and another is inclusive matters. And we really call each other out on that. When we see things, they'll say, are you really believing people matters? Or you said this, does that mean you have inclusive matters? So we start off with that. Then we have a lot of professional development. We have another one coming up that we're trying to understand each other and understand cultures. We're trying to listen to each other. Everybody's not alike. I can say something to 3 different people of 3 different cultures or races, and somebody will think it's great, somebody else will be offended. So we've got to think about who the people around us are. So we work on that. We have a certificate with our DEI department, and we're real committed, and they lead us in a lot of different things as well as our professional development. But we really try to focus on kind of respecting each other, and that's what we all want. We want to be respected, and we have a diversity statement that talks about that and is trying to know we are not always right, but we want to do better. And I think that Dr. Victorian really said it well to say, we as leaders have a responsibility to model that we really care about other people.
Thank you. My dad was so saying. The first thing that comes to mind is that we have lots of leaders that work in family medicine, and they might be in the front office, there might be a patient navigator, might be a clinician, physician, a social worker, might be a community engagement leader, and the pictures that come up for me for this modeling, which I think Chief Victorian is, Dr. Chief Victorian is correct, that modeling is the most powerful thing. I can do as much training as I want. I can say things, but if I'm not doing them, oh, that's bad on me. And there's no more clear example of that happening in real life than my children. Where did you learn that? I learned it from you. That happens, right? But I mentioned these leaders throughout our organization because one of the most brilliant things that I think, and I don't mean to call you out, Dr. Newman, but the walk with the doc. Imagine if your doctor went on a little stroll with you after work in your neighborhood, around the block, just chatting, just talking. Things come up. You connect over life instead of a diagnosis. You connect over things that matter instead of just a treatment, right? You connect on many levels in a way that crosses those gaps that exist sometimes between institutions and the neighborhoods that they're in. So I'm really grateful for the leaders that we have who out of their own initiative, and sometimes formal, sometimes informal, sometimes planned, sometimes spontaneous, seek wholeheartedly to connect with compassion. And I'm really grateful for that kind of modeling that happens throughout our whole organization.
Either
Yeah, I'll actually just add off of something that Jaja shared about taking care of yourself. And I think that oftentimes in this line of work, I remember being at a DEI conference, this is about a decade ago, but at the end of that conference, we gathered in a room and people just they were tired. They were tired and they were worn out and there was a lot of tears, but there was also, it was kind of cathartic, and afterwards we were recharged because we were with people who understood how difficult this work is. And so I would say one of the things we also need to do better at is teaching each other and role modeling ourselves how to take care of ourselves. And for me, that's been a really important way that I maintain a positive attitude in this work, and also it helps me to have more compassion and more understanding for others, because you take a lot of hits from lots of different people when you do this work, and it can be exhausting. But and oftentimes when you're encountering people who are in opposition to the work that you're doing for whatever reason, really trying to build those bridges of understanding and have some compassion and understanding and kindness, and that really goes a long way with grace, rather than try to, I call it clubbing baby seals, right? Just pushing people in the deep end of some of this work that you're trying to do and being upset that they're not kind of getting it, right? And so I think it's really important that you have realistic goals. You see that this is a long game, but there's also, you have to have this coalition of the willing that are with you, and you have to have a network that's going to support you, and also just care for yourself along the way.
So you all each represent various areas of industry and organizations in Waco, and I think Waco has come a long way and is doing a lot of good work in terms of partnerships. So what are some strengths within our community that you see in terms of partnerships, and what are some opportunities for growth that you think are present?
I can go first. I think especially being in a smaller town in Waco, there's so many different connections and connection points, right? We've heard so many stories already here in this panel today. And a little story time for me is I was a undergrad in the School of Social Work, and one of the first classes was a community organizing class. And then in that class, we were doing a group project where we were interviewing different residents in the 25th Street neighborhood, especially about the 25th Street Theater, and interviewing small business owners, residents, neighbors, to find out more about what they envisioned for the community, especially when it came to at that time, the 25th Street Theater was just an abandoned building. Right, and so that was where I first met Fernando Arroyo at that time in my class, because he was representing the Senior Heights Neighborhood Association, and I was, a budding social worker at that time. This is over 12 years ago almost now, and so then, it's crazy because time flies, but then being in a community like Waco, we can see so many connections like that, because just 3 weeks ago, as part of the Sustainability Board, I was able to sit in the 25th Street Community Center now. That's fully renovated, the fire station now, and just see kind of the full circle moment, and now being on this panel, to be able to see the connection and the relationships that can really be deeply built within Waco. And so that's a huge strength that you can't always find elsewhere, all the different connections and the ways that you can run into folks in all sorts of different places, especially if you're seeking to be more involved in the community in different ways. But then when it comes to areas of growth, I think, us as a community, there's still so much work when it comes to acknowledging our history and the places we've come from, especially for why there's so much inequity or injustice, even in Waco, right? So, for example, on Sunday, there's going to be a historical marker dedication for the 1916 lynching of Jesse Washington. And it's taken years and years, for this to happen. It's a historic moment. We're living in history now to be able to witness alongside the descendants and family members on Sunday at 3 in front of the courthouse. But things like that, sometimes people can be like, oh, well, that was so long ago, 1916, what's the big deal? But really, our community has not really had open, honest, global conversation about even something like that, and the impacts that has, right, on our community residents and Wacoans, and the ways that legacy and the trauma can continue generation to generation, right? And so I think that's the area of growth for us, is that regardless of what organization we're in, or whether it's within our own family, starting to have those truth-filled, honest dialogues and conversations about our history and where we've been and then where we're headed.
Okay, I'll go. I'll have to say that being here nearly 2 years, when I first got here, I had people that still tell me today, I was really concerned about you going to Waco. I'm like, what do you mean? And being the first female police chief and the first African American police chief, and history apparently in Waco. I have not experienced, thank God, anything that would negatively have impacted my decision to be here. But from day one, I've had people in communities and organizations saying, hey, whatever you need. And so when we did our first event, I went to my team and they were like, okay, Chief, we don't know how we're gonna pull this off. And I was like, yeah, we don't have the budget for that, but there are plenty of people in our community who'll be willing to step up and help us if we ask. I said, when I got here, I had plenty of people saying, whatever you need, Chief, let's call them on it. And let me tell you, the city of Waco and the communities of Waco show up every time. Backpacks, and we're talking about back to school drive, we're talking about trumpetry and volunteering and decorating your car with your own money and bringing candy for 1,000 kids. I mean, the community has shown up and it has just been phenomenal. And when we're talking about growth, what I've noticed though is that we have plenty of grassroots organizations and other organizations that are not familiar with one another, kind of work in silos.
That's true.
And I just feel like if we I don't know, if we're great. I know we have, some business organizations, but create some kind of phone list, phone book, or whatever we need to do to learn about one another. Put a little excerpt in a magazine or whatever, so that we can share and get to know what one another's doing. Because a lot of us are doing great work and could be even doing even better work if we teamed up with other organizations. So that would say, that's what I would say would be an area of growth.
One of the things are the way we work together, like we work with Waco Family Medicine, with Together We Dine, and some other things, which is really pretty unique. And I think our community has kind of come together. If you haven't done it yet, you might want to consider on the Racial Equity Institute. And so we have people from all over that learn things from history that maybe we didn't know, or maybe we tried not to know. I don't know. So all of these, I think all of those are really good. Now, one of the things that probably you don't want to let it die, you've had a seminar, okay, that's great. So I think continue to find ways to collaborate across the community on those kinds of issues would be good.
Absolutely. And Waco is a place where you can do good. Waco is a place where you can make something cool happen. A number of years ago, this was back when Chief Alberto Millis was the chief, but I saw him earlier today too. But there were a lot of neighbors who were getting their water cut off, or they didn't have the ability to get water turned on in their home, which leads to sanitary conditions, which leads to a number of other elements and other issues, right, in families and neighbors' homes. And I was able to join a small team of folks who were like, what can we do? What can we do about this? And so we put our heads together and reached out to a number of folks, including administrators from the city of Waco. And the reason why they couldn't get their water turned on was because they didn't have a social security number. So we're like, okay, so if you don't have a social security number, will you take an alternative number or identification card or something like that? And the city of Waco worked with our little team to accept alternative IDs so that then families can turn on and have water, have water at home, and instead of trying to find a neighbor or ask somebody, hey, can you put water in your kid's name or something like that so we can have water. So we were able to make a small difference, but it meant a lot to a number of folks. There was a string of robberies, muggings, of Latinos or immigrants getting targeted. And that same group, along with another configuration of others who said, we want to help too, said, what can we do about this? What can we do about this? And we reached out to some banks to ask them, you know, what's the deal? Can you help out? Like, and the reason why we went to banks was this: they were being targeted and mugged because at the store they would pull out a wad of cash to pay for their groceries. And why? Because they weren't bankable. Why? Because they didn't have a social security number. And so we did the same thing. Asked the banks, can you accept an alternative form of ID? And I learned a lot about banks at that time. I learned that credit unions couldn't do it because they follow a different set of rules than international banks and bigger banks. They follow another set of rules. So we found out that 5 of the big banks said, yes, we will gladly accept other forms of identification, including voter registration cards and a number of other things. But little things like that mean a lot to families, and to children, and to mom and dads, and to our neighbors. In Waco, you can make a difference.
Add to that for just 1 second. I want to tell you about a program headed by our own Sophie Martinez in partnership with one of our other officers. We have a program called Unidos, right? Where we're trying to connect with the Latino community and those that may be immigrants that may not have social, to let them know that when you call the police, we don't care about your immigration status. You've been victimized. Because I was in Houston around the time when we started talking about the Latinos and the immigrants being targeted. The same things were happening in our community, and we had to figure out a better way to connect with our Spanish-speaking or Latino community or immigrant community to let them know that their immigration status didn't matter. We needed to know when they were victimized so that we could catch, because they were afraid to report. They were afraid to report because they thought that when we called the police, we were going to find out they were immigrants and take them to jail. And please share that information. But our Sophie Martinez and a partner of hers are working with our communities to try to improve our relationships with our immigrant community to make sure that everybody's welcome and let them know that we serve everybody. And unless you have been arrested and are going to jail, we're not going to ask your status. Okay, so that's not going to happen. Okay, thank you. It should not happen. And if it does, I
And I will talk a little bit about some opportunities for you to get engaged with some of the initiatives that they're talking about after our panel. But I do want to open it up for questions from the audience. I know we have some students joining us that have some questions, so I welcome you all. If you would, just again, so the panelists can know who you are, if you could kind of say your name and your organization that you're representing when you ask your question. And Elaine is going to walk around with the microphone.
I actually wrote down my question, and it was because I thought of a question when you guys were talking. But my name is Ashley Flores again, and I am the Latinx Coalition intern with the Multicultural Affairs Department here at Baylor University, and I basically work with all of the active Latinx organizations here on campus. And I am a senior this semester, and it's my last semester, so last push. Thank you. But I've also been really involved with a lot of the organizations here at Baylor. From a freshman, I was a member of HSA, but I was also a member of LASH. And I was also a member of not even cultural organizations, but just fun organizations I wanted to get to know people and make connections. But then I became more involved with HSA, became the social chair, then the president, and now the Latinx Coalition intern. But one thing that I really noticed is a personal observation that I really have noticed on Baylor's campus is how ununited the Hispanic community truly is here on Baylor's campus. So what are ways that we can make the community more united here? That is one thing that I've been working towards, especially finishing off my semester. But I definitely do want to lay the foundation for the next intern for the fall of 23.
Thank you for your question, Ashley. And I've heard that before here as well. And being new, I've been doing a lot of listening. And so I think that's a culture issue. Culture in the sense that you have to shape that culture to do better. And that takes leadership. And so leaders like yourself and others that you might be mentoring after you to address that. So there might be some initiatives in welcoming first-year students that are coming in. So they're coming into something new and shaping it that way. So it is going to take some time to change culture here and to create some more unity among our Hispanic students. But it is doable, but it takes some concentrated effort by leaders, working with good mentors. But I'm confident over time that it can be done. I've seen it happen at some smaller schools, but similar issues that are really cultural issues, like campus climate issues, that can be addressed really with leadership. And so I think it's important. If you want to connect with me sometime, we could talk about some ideas for that.
Other questions for the panelists?
I don't usually use a mic. My name is Barbara Hills, and I'm representing myself, but I'm also a school nurse in the Waco ISD system. And so we have a very diverse population in our school system. One of my questions is partially coming from being a white woman of an older age that grew up with segregation and that it had to be my culture. How do we encourage people of color and other ethnicities to maintain their own culture and not be afraid of that? I had the fortune to marry a man who grew up in Central America. We speak Spanish at home. Our girls are bilingual. I meet so many Hispanics that don't speak Spanish. And so now at school, I ask, do your parents speak English? Do they speak Spanish? I ask this of every Latino last name because I don't know. But how do we get that? How do we get the Asian community to not adopt English-sounding names? Yes, we have trouble pronouncing some of them, but how do we do that so that they aren't becoming like me, but yet we then become a stew and not a melting pot with all the flavors?
I've never really thought about it from the other side before, because I think as a person of color, oftentimes thinking about the reasons why folks might assimilate, right, or shift their names or shift their culture, because I think growing up for me as a second generation Taiwanese American in Norman, Oklahoma, I always had dreams, like little dreams of wishing I would grow up and wake up one day and have like blonde hair, blue eyes, or not know Chinese, or not have to bring the food that my mom was cooking to school, and experiencing bullying at school growing up. And it wasn't until, for me at least, being able to grow up overseas. We moved as a family when I was 13 to experience the culture and to be with my family and to like learn the traditions that I really learned to really embody and be proud of my cultural roots. And so I think to answer part of your question is for so many people, you know, I think when you don't see representation, when you don't see the food and drinks that you would grow up loving, or when you don't see the acceptance or the appreciation of your culture, we can't blame people for not wanting to be part of that, right? And so I think it means that each of us has to be part of looking at what can we do within our spheres, within our power, within our influence to create more representation, especially for communities or populations that are the most marginalized, right? And oftentimes that's going to be the populations whose cultures are the least represented. And that's part of the work and the reason for why we do what we do, right? I don't have children yet, but I think about, okay, what is the legacy that we're going to be creating for future children as we continue doing what we do, even though there is sacrifices, you know, to being an entrepreneur here. A lot of sacrifices, you know, when it comes to being an Asian-owned small business where it's less than 3% Asian. I think we have a lot of friends that are like, why are y'all in Central Texas, right? But I think if everybody had that mentality and mindset, then we're never going to be able to create change that we want to see.
This might seem like your question, Barbara, sparked a memory for me, and it's a recent one. I went to the movie theaters with my kids, my family, and we watched the movie Wakanda. The recent one. Now, why does that matter? Well, representation matters. Diversity matters. It's not icing on the cake. It's the cake. It's the ingredients. It's the batter. It's everything. It's the yeast. It's everything that would make the cake what it is. I was born in the Yucatan Peninsula, and in the city of Campeche, the state of Campeche. And moved to the United States when I was about 5 years old with my brother and my mom. And my mom was trying to start all over and start a new life. Never, ever, ever, never, ever have I heard in Waco Mayan spoken. Some of my relatives speak Mayan in Mexico, and they still do. Never, ever, until I saw, I'm 45 now, until I saw the movie Wakanda at a Waco theater. And unfortunately, it was the bad guy. He was bad at first, but then he turned around. But he spoke Yucatec Maya.
Wow.
I speak a little bit of Yucatec Maya, and so just seeing that, hearing that, might be a silly entertainment experience, but for me, it wasn't that. It was more than that. For me, it meant another element of representation where I live at home, and that adds a lot. So I wouldn't put all of the responsibility on people of color, keep preserving their heritage and all that stuff. It would be creating a world that gives access and opportunity for representation and diversity.
That's good. I think, and I love what both of you said was essentially, I think it goes to your question is figure out who's not in the room and find a way to bring those voices into the room. And if you can do it with somebody whose voice it actually is, that's more powerful. Give them an opportunity to be in the room at the table. That's what you're saying. I think you had a question there.
I think my comment is going to be to Chief Victorian. My name is Connie, and I represent the community. I live in Oakwood neighborhood, and so I started the association about 2-3 years ago. I kind of stepped down because membership for all neighborhood associations is very hard. Oakwood is predominantly Black, Hispanic. When I was going out trying to recruit members, I noticed a lot of people didn't want to because they feel we're not gonna be heard. They're not gonna listen. It doesn't matter what we say. I'm so thankful for the community engagement, Miss Anita Gomez, Officer Anita Gomez, Miss Sophie Martinez. When Officer Gomez started coming to the meetings, because they go to every meeting, which I'm thankful for, I went out again and tried to recruit, and the community doesn't have trust. So I stepped down. This is not where I need to be. I need to be the voice. My motto when I started Oakwood Neighborhood Association was bringing unity to the community. So, bringing unity to our community, I wasn't doing that as trying to start this association. So I branched out, I talked to a couple of officers, and how can we get into the school? Never thought that there would be probably a roadblock because Waco ISD. Then you have Waco PD. So my thing was, okay, you have Waco ISD. They're there during school hours. We need to get these children and these families to have confidence with, trust and confidence with Waco PD, because you all are out there 24/7, 7 days a week. How can I do this? I'm still working on it, but my question is, how can even me being a part of it, how can I help bring Waco PD into the school, into the community, in my community? Because we need them to we need our families to build that trust, which you've already mentioned, and I appreciate that. We need community, neighborhood representative as myself, where they're gonna listen to me, because I can tell them, they may not listen 100%, but they're gonna give me the opportunity where Miss Martinez goes in there. They may listen to her, but probably not as well as they listen if I go, because I'm part of the community. I'm part of who they are. I live with them. I live next door to them. And so I want my community to have that trust with the police department. I want the Hispanic community, whether they have legal status or not to be afraid to call the police, not to be afraid if they see Chief Victorian, if they see Officer Martinez and go and talk to her, shake her hand. I want them to have that. We have to start trying to make a change with our Hispanic community for our children, because the children in that community need a lot of positive role models. And I just want to know how, we gotta start somewhere, and I think the school is, because if you start with the kids, the parents are gonna want to know, why is the police at my school? Why are they talking to they're gonna get curious and interested, they're gonna start coming. And so then we can build a bridge to, with our families and our police department.
So Waco ISD police department is responsible for Waco ISD campuses. And before, after school, they have night patrol that go around the schools. But we're responsible. Those kids, we share the same kids. They go to their schools, they live in our neighborhood. I mean, and they live in the neighborhoods that we patrol, right? But that's what I was talking about with increasing the number of positive interactions we have with our community. You started by saying Anita Gomez and Sophie Martinez, they're out there. Building trust takes time. It takes time. And it's gonna take, again, leadership from the top. Anytime somebody invites me, I don't think there's anybody in this room could say they invited me anywhere and I said no. Every time somebody invites me to go somewhere to interact with kids in particular, I'm there, because I understand the importance. Being able to prevent and intervene now, as youngsters, it's gonna save the police department a lot of headaches in 5 to 10 years. right? So if we can build that trust with them, anytime there's an opportunity, if you guys are hosting something and you want us there to have a tape or in plain clothes, if we need to come in plain clothes to look like human beings and then have conversations with people, and then before the night's over, say we're the police, and people go, what? You know? And I didn't know the police could do, well, yeah, because we're human beings. And any way that we know, and our team they're very sharp, and they know what we need to do in order to connect with our community. So if you're hosting something, or if there's any other way we can be involved outside of the association, then let us know, and we're there. And again, if I need to, I've been invited to Waco ISD, I've been invited to University High School, I've been invited to La Vega. I've read to kids over off of, North Bosque Elementary. I mean, whatever you need me to do, then get in there and connect with the kids and to answer questions, I'm gonna make time to do it because I know how important it is, right? But again, building trust takes time, particularly with the history of policing, trauma, the things that they're seeing on TV. Most of the stuff that they see related to police are not good. When each and every day we're doing dynamic things, there are many times, the only times they show us on TV is when something negative happens, we paint a broad brush, right? But each and every day our officers are taking guns off the street without hurting anybody. They don't hear about that, right? But we've made it a point now in our council reports to make sure that we share those good contacts and those good arrests without us having to use force or to hurt anybody or anybody hurt us. We share that information so that they know that. And we're trying to do a better job. And I think that our PIO, if you don't follow us, please follow us on Facebook, on Twitter, on Instagram. I think we're out there. Waco Police Department. We share a lot of information. We share, missing persons. We share we have good arrests. We share when people are wanted. We share our events and how we're going to connect with the community. So please join us with that. If there's something else that I can do or you see or any ideas that you have to help us to better create trust in your neighborhood, please let us know.
Just to add to what Chief Victorian's saying, I wish I could take credit for Unidos, but it's actually Anita Gomez heading it. I'm kind of her sidekick. But it's a great program, so that's a start. But we do go into the schools. I can't tell you how many times we had Sol Ross. I would go to the Spanish-speaking only kiddos, and I do the presentations in Spanish and all. And when we do Red Ribbon, we do go into the schools. Waco SD doesn't stop us at the door and say, no, you can't come in. Nope, I just call and say, hey, Sandy, Chief, we're gonna be going into this school, this and that. Okay, Sophie, thanks. They let their SRO know, we're good to go. But we do go into the schools. We are going into the schools. Go to Waco High, we may be involved in a couple of fights or, have to kind of, but, we're going in there with their criminal justice programs. We're involved in the criminal justice programs. We're involved in their career days. Not too long ago, some officers went, Chief Victorian, myself, all of us have gone in to read to the kids, whether it's in Spanish or English, whatever they want. But we are in there and all, but again, like she said, it's taking time. It's taking time, and I've been doing it for years and years and years, and I hate that Sol Ross shut down because that was a school that had a lot of kiddos that spoke only Spanish, and I would go in there and talk to them, and that was doing that. And unfortunately, it went away, but we're working at it. We are going into the schools.
Hi, my name is Elizabeth Salinas. I'm Lisa. And I want to say thank you to all of you for being here and everyone in the room, especially our Waco ISD Principal Isabel Lozano, Board Member Mr. Ochoa, Board Member Mr. Lasagna, Waco PD Aguilar Officer, his wife Ms. Aguilar, and I also work for Waco ISD. I'm Assistant Principal at University High School, and of course Jesse Boteo. We love Jesse. And so I don't have a question, but I want to say thank you to each of you for being here. Not just for people, I'm not of color, I'm a person. Depends on the time of the year, I'm more or less. I'd like to say thank you to Mr. Arroyo for sharing the information because we have so many kids, regardless of what they look like. and they don't think about going on to college. I graduated twice from Baylor. My daughter is now a sophomore at Baylor. Her dad graduated twice from Baylor, and her mom was a WISD teacher who also graduated from Baylor. But I want to ask each of you to please, when you see any kid, I talk to all kids, in the grocery store, in the line, say, what are you doing? How are you? And ask them, what are you going to do when you graduate? What school are you going to? Because a lot of kids do not even think about it. So encourage every kid that looks like everybody in this room, please, because we want them to all be successful. In the public school system, we are having many challenges after COVID, but we're doing our very best. And we'd like to get all of them at Baylor, MCC, because I also went to MCC. And we'd like to go to TSTC everywhere, because we want our kids in general, because they are our future. So please encourage every child, ask them to move forward. And thank you, Nurse Hill, for being here also from Waco ISD. And I want to add that the way that we can get our kids to embrace their own culture, because I will go ahead and say that I grew up in a suburb of Waco, Marina, that's where I'm from. Homecoming queen, only one that looks like me in my class. But the reason why my kids don't all speak Spanish is because we didn't speak it at home. So it was not something intentional, even though I'm fluent. But I will say that whenever we have self-pride in who we are, and we're not gearing toward assimilation, then our kids will be more likely to be empowered to embrace their own culture. But I don't think it's their own culture because it's a language, because everything that we do is our culture, because we are who we are, you know, where we live. And my culture is University High School. My culture is Waco. My culture is Baylor. My culture is McLennan County, because that's who I am and that's where I grew up, not just whatever Tex-Mex restaurant, because you didn't cook that much. So, but what I'm going to say is that whenever we embrace who we are and we have self-pride within who we are, but then also, if you're not somebody that speaks Spanish or a different language, then just be not accepting, because we don't want your acceptance. We want everyone just to appreciate each of us who we are. Thank you all for being here.
Hello, everybody. My name is Jessica Sanchez, and I am here as the president of the Hispanic Student Association. I got to serve as vice president with Ashley last year, and before that I was a member. My first year here, I transferred, so just having a community here was really big. And I had a comment and a question, but I also kind of wanted to go back as to how, like, our people can accept our culture. I think that, like, coming from somebody that's young and is still trying to learn the balance and really find out what my culture is, I would say that acceptance can only go as far as the message goes. Every day that I wake up representing HSA, I have a message. I stand up not just for myself, but for everybody in this room and people that can't be in this room, but my message will only go as far as it's heard. I think that the big change will come when people in my generation and people who are going to come from my generation, my peers' children, my children, when we start educating our children that accepting other cultures is normal and that not one person is, you know, superior than other, I think that's when the change will really start to happen. And I think that's when embracing our culture will be easier, because even here, me standing as the president of the Hispanic Student Association, the journey was very long. And it was full of, I'm really embarrassed that my mom made me enchiladas this morning because my peers are eating PB&Js. And it goes as far as, like, my sister not being able to fully speak Spanish anymore because the only person that was truly there pushing her aside from my parents was me in school with her. And I think that the change will only go as far as the message goes, but I think that the powers within my generation, and that's what I'm working here for, and that's what I'm trying to do. And I hope that my peers can get that as well, but one step at a time. That's how we embrace our culture. And then just my question for the panel would be, what are your plans to continue to embrace leaders like myself, especially female leaders? I know that within this room, as student leaders, the only female leaders were actually myself, and within just university, it's really hard to see females step up, especially when we come from minority groups, not just Hispanic, but Asian students in the Black Coalition, just in general. Thank you.
As an African American female in a male-dominated profession, represented only by 12% female, that statistic is right, and only 3% of us being police chiefs as women, less than 0.5% African American. I get where you're coming from. Only thing that I can tell you is never be afraid to stand up and be who you are. I sit around many tables. I can't say that as I was coming up through the organization that I was not selected. I always wanted to make sure that I was competitive in every rank, every position that I had, which is why I went back to get a PhD. Everybody was getting a master's. I said, okay, PhD, right? And I never wanted anybody to discredit me or say that I wasn't credible in my role or did not know my role, even though it still happens. As an African American female chief, one of my first things when I got here was had to fire somebody, and we had to go to arbitration. And there was an audio recording played from somebody who was involved in the investigation, and he was sympathizing with the guy that I had to fire, and he was like, "Oh, I feel sorry for you having to meet with the chief for her to make a decision on your career, because first of all, she's Black and she's a female." And so that still happens. I don't care how many divisions I've worked in, how many ranks I've had, the fact that I'm a chief of police with a PhD. People are still gonna talk. But we have to eliminate the naysayers. If they are not in the arena, they don't matter. If they're not fighting in the arena, they're standing on the side, they don't matter, right? So if you can see yourself, you're the president, right? So if you can see yourself as president, you can see yourself as president of a corporation. You can see yourself as president of the United States of America. There's a program that we have with the police department called, in policing called 30 by 30, right? We're trying to get 30% representation of females in policing by the year 2030. The reason why is because we police differently. And that's statistics, that's research, I'm just saying.
Doctor said.
Communicate. Research has shown that female police officers communicate better, we're more empathetic, and that the community trusts us. So why wouldn't I want to be represented by a lot of people? I'm not pushing my male partners out, right? But we are going really hard at trying to make sure we're recruiting females to represent us in law enforcement. So you stay the course, you stay focused, the naysayers do not matter. And if there's any way that I can ever help you or to encourage you or to talk about, anything that happened along my journey, I'm more than willing to sit down and talk to you. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you for that comment too. I appreciate it and the question. And I came from an institution, Messiah University, where I worked there for 17 years, and most of the executive leadership there were women, and all my bosses up until now have been women. The chair of the board was a woman. I think out of the 7 VPs on the senior leadership team, only 2 were men. And so I was in that context, and each and every step that I moved up, I have these women that were helping and speaking into me. And so I try to do that for others, and I think we all should try to identify people and help them to achieve their goals and to speak their future into them. And I do think that your generation is the one that's really going to change the world in significant ways. But I remember the president of my old university coming back from a conference of the CCCU, Council for Christian College Universities, and she said, she's been a college president for over 18 years, and she said that they were given a charge to prepare the next generation of leaders in Christian higher education. And they were charged with going back to their institutions and identifying women and people of color to invest in. And so she said to me, we want to pay for your doctorate, so you could go ahead and get to that next level for us. And so we can do things like that. whenever you get to a position where you have the ability to help other people, I think we should do that, and it's important. And so I think hopefully people have done that in your life, and people will continue to do that in your life moving forward. You just had another offer up here, and I think everyone in this room would help you also. And connections are really important, and so continue to make connections, continue to be that bridge for other people, especially don't discount the first-year students coming in who are looking to you as a leader, and you could really speak life into them and get them on a trajectory that's going to send them off into God knows what. So.
Yeah, I want to say thank you to our panelists tonight for those inspiring words. I know, I think it was Fernando who said it, but I do think Waco is a place where we're unique in that we can make a difference. Things can change because we're not on so far end of the spectrum somewhere. And there are enough people in this community, I've seen it with the work that I do, there are enough people in this community who have the passion and the drive and the energy to come together and make a difference. And I know that it's just gonna take time. I think it's just gonna take time and not giving up and taking care of yourself is a theme that we've heard. So I really wanna say thank you to the panelists. Thank you so much. Before I invite Elena to close us out, I do want to talk about a few opportunities. If you are interested in continuing these conversations, whether it's about race, equity, whether it's about inclusiveness, there's a few opportunities. The Waco Foundation and Cooper Foundation have joined together to create kind of Waco Race Equity. And so we offer different opportunities for you to engage with other community members to talk about race and issues specifically in Waco. So if you are interested in participating in the Race Equity Institute, which is a 2-day phase 1 or a 3-hour groundwater, please come find me or look at our website. You can nominate yourself, you can nominate other people. We are really trying to get leadership. Dr. Victorian will be there tomorrow morning, so thank you for that, to go through that training. So we have a lot of leaders in the Waco community, and we actually bring together those leaders after they've done the training to continue the conversations here in Waco. And so there really is kind of momentum there. Another opportunity that we will offer soon and then a few more times throughout the next year will be a race-based caucus, and we're working hard to get an Asian group up and going, but right now we have a white group, a Hispanic group, and a Black group. So if you're interested in talking with people specifically within your race, then you can have opportunities to talk about what it's like to be a person of color of a specific race in Waco, and so we're working on that. So that cohort will start February 22nd and run for 6 weeks, and we'll offer a few more after that. And then lastly, Dr. McCowan mentioned this, but we partner with Waco Family Medicine and McClendon Community College to offer Together We Dine, which are an hour and a half opportunities to just have a conversation around race with other people in Waco. So there is one of those coming up on February 22nd. From 11:30 to 1. So if you're interested, I will stick around for a little bit. If you're interested in any of these things, I'm happy to connect you. But I want to thank our panelists one last time.
Hello, everyone. I hope you are as moved as I am this evening. This is the third time that we've had this kind of discussion with bridging communities. Thank you again to Baylor University External Affairs for always supporting the initiatives, the vision, and the mission of the Hispanic Leaders Network. I want to again thank the panel, Chief Victorian. You're right, every time HLN has called you, you have been there. And I know that you do respond, and we appreciate your leadership so much. Jaja, thank you. Jaja and Devin have really been a leader for small businesses. I'm an entrepreneur, I own a business as well. But they have really just been a model for small businesses to make sure that their company, from the employees they hire to the vendors they use, are serious about DEI initiatives. So thank you. Fernando Arroyo from Waco Family Medicine. So much has happened with Waco Family Medicine from their rebranding. There was a reason and a purpose behind all of that. If you've never been to any of their facilities, you need to go. But they do so much work with DEI. They do so much work with training their employees on how to communicate and care, passionately care about the clients they serve. Dr. McCowan, I'm a product of MCC. And, I thought MCC was hard. But I so appreciated all of the rigor that was poured into me because you take a Latina like me who grew up in South Waco, my barrio, right down the street from the silos. It didn't smell that great back then by the railroad tracks. And for someone like me, who, by the way, students don't do this, but got married at the age of 17, still a senior in high school. My husband and I will be celebrating our 36th wedding anniversary on Valentine's Day. And to start off at an entry-level position as an office clerk in Waco ISD and think to myself at one point in time, this is all I will ever do or be, and there's nothing wrong with that. But to have leaders that look like me, and some of them that didn't look like me, to pour into me and believe in me, that I could go back to school and I could earn a degree, and then another degree, and then ultimately be an assistant superintendent in one of the largest school districts. It's just a dream. It's a dream that actually can happen. And students, keep chasing your dreams. Keep chasing, don't stop. All of these leaders who've given their time and are dedicated to making sure that we're making the world a better place for all of us, they're doing this for you too, and for your children to come as well. And Dr. Diaz-Espinosa, she has been a vital part. Her and her husband, Dr. Mito Diaz-Espinosa, have been walking alongside Hispanic Leaders Network since the inception, which we will be celebrating 5 years in June. Out in Toronto, he hates when I talk now, but I'm going to do it because we're friends. HLN happened because an African-American man said, hey, and that was the late Dr. Nelson. He said, where are all your Hispanic leaders gathering? Where are they? And so he challenged Alfred and I to start the Hispanic Leaders Network. And it has continued to grow. Thank you to many volunteers and a wonderful board that is dedicated and committed to making sure that we are walking and talking and aligning everything we do with our vision, and that is to support and be a resource for current and future leaders so they can have a positive impact in our community. So in the words of one of our greatest leaders in history ever, the late Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. said, I refuse to accept the view that mankind is so tragically bound to the starless midnight of racism and war that the bright daybreak of peace and brotherhood can never become a reality. I believe the unarmed truth and unconditional love will have the final word. Folks, let's stay true to being committed and encouraged. Make an explosive and impactful effort to build positive and long-lasting relationships, and take every possible step needed to bridge communities in Waco, Texas. There is still so much work to do. That's why we continue to have these conversations. And some organizations they're moving, they're changing policy, and that's reflected in their commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion. Some have posted their commitment publicly and even have held themselves accountable to their commitment, and we see those in numbers in some of our organizations. Some have added J for justice to DEI and B for belonging. Yes, JDEIB. But we all know there is still so much work to be done. Saying and doing are two different things. The Hispanic Leaders Network is committed to facilitating and supporting diversity and race equity conversations like this great conversation we have this evening. And we look forward to continuing this conversation and hope you will continue to join us. Now, for HLN news and announcements. We would like for you to mark your calendar. HLN's next Conectar-Connect event will be held on Friday, March 3rd. It will be a luncheon, and it is being sponsored by Texas State Technical College. So please check our social media and our website for information on that. Also, HLN will host another event, and we want all of you to be there. Don't want you to miss it. Mark your calendar for Thursday, May the 4th. We will be hosting our first major fundraiser. So HLN became a 501c3 in July of this past year. And so we're learning a lot on how to be a 501c3, and we know that we need support in order to continue what we're doing, which is so important. Our fundraising theme is Latin Night. It is, of course, all-inclusive, and you better believe me when I say it's going to be nothing but fun. It will be an evening celebrating our culture through authentic and delicious dishes, music from various regions of Latin America, also featuring Baylor University's mariachi band, lots of dancing and lots of festivities. The money that will be raised through Latino Night, again, will help support HLN's multiple programs and initiatives. For example, it will help to continue our Conectar program and also host inspirational leaders, provide professional development, continue to support Navegando, which is our high school mentorship program, as well as our language justice initiatives. Please be on the lookout for that, and we're also looking for sponsors, so don't be surprised if we call some of you. We love the word yes, by the way.